What happens when a thriving CEO goes incognito, only to encounter prejudice in his own store? It was just past 10:00 a.m. on a Saturday when Terence Hall adjusted the brim of his cap using the car's rearview mirror. The reflection staring back barely resembled him, not the polished CEO behind a booming retail empire, but simply an ordinary man blending into the crowd. His casual hoodie and worn jeans were a stark departure from the tailored suits that usually defined his daily presence. Today wasn't about meetings or profit margins. Today, he would walk into his own company unannounced, to view it from the eyes of someone anonymous. Terence had long stood by the belief that human connection mattered most. His business was built around the idea that each customer deserved respect and recognition, regardless of who they were. But lately, a murmur of discontent had begun rising through the ranks. Complaints about mistreatment, indifference, and possible bias. If there was any truth behind these allegations, Terence needed to find out, not as the man in charge, but as someone on the receiving end. The store in question was located just outside Dallas, Texas, in a busy shopping plaza. It wasn't his flagship site, nor the most profitable branch in the company, but it carried deep personal significance. It had been the first location he launched beyond his home state, a bold risk that had turned into a rewarding venture. In its early years, Terence had visited often, ensuring it stayed aligned with his values. Now, after time and distance, he found himself wondering, had that original sense of welcome and fairness endured? As he pulled into the parking spot and shut off the engine, a mix of nerves and anticipation stirred inside him. He was moments away from stepping into unfamiliar territory, stripping away his identity as CEO to test whether the foundation he'd built still stood strong. Unfiltered truth, however painful, was something he owed to himself and everyone else who walked into that store. But Terence couldn't have predicted what would unfold next. His determination to see things clearly was about to lead him into a moment that would stay with him forever, one that would append everything he thought he knew about his company. With the sun rising above him, Terence exited the car and stepped into the lively lot. Bright sunlight bounced off the windshields of parked cars as Terence stepped into the lot. He adjusted the strap of his worn canvas messenger bag, the type you'd expect any ordinary shopper to carry. Today, he wasn't Terence Hall, the CEO. He was just another face in the crowd, no title, no expectations. The store's exterior shone under the sun, its familiar logo standing tall and proud. A quiet sense of satisfaction swelled within him as he neared the entrance. This place was the result of years of vision and effort, but sentiment quickly gave way to purpose. He wasn't here for nostalgia, he was here to observe. As he entered, the cool rush of air conditioning greeted him. The store buzzed with life. Families wheeled carts through aisles packed with goods. Children's laughter rang near the toys, and staff in branded uniforms moved around briskly, restocking, checking out customers, answering questions. At first glance, everything looked as it should. But Terence wasn't interested in surface impressions. He slowed down by a display of vibrantly colored kitchen gadgets, soaking in the atmosphere. Nearby, a young employee in a striped jacket spoke animatedly to a shopper, pointing out features. Another associate quietly tidied a shelf, his actions quick but mechanical. Across the floor, near electronics, a young man stood slouched behind the counter, eyes glued to his phone. Terence casually drifted in that direction, strolling slowly through the aisles. He picked up a set of headphones, examined them closely, pretending to consider buying. This moment was a quiet test, nothing complicated, just an opportunity. Would the employee look up, offer help, a greeting? A simple smile, but the man stayed glued to his screen. He barely looked at Terence, let alone said a word. Terence lingered, giving the employee time to engage. Still, not a glance, no acknowledgement. A tight feeling crept into Terrence's gut. Disappointment, frustration, maybe both, but he wasn't ready to make assumptions. Perhaps the employee was distracted. Perhaps he didn't notice. So Terrence kept moving, watching carefully, continuing to study every interaction that unfolded around him. He noticed an elderly woman in the home goods aisle, clearly in need of help. She looked around anxiously, frustration etched on her face. Before Terrence could make his way over to see what would happen, another staff member approached her, friendly and engaged. The woman visibly relaxed as they started to talk. The difference from his earlier interaction was striking. Still, Terrence turned once more toward the electronics counter, hoping to give the young worker another opportunity. What happened next, however, would confirm that this wasn't just a momentary lapse. It pointed to a deeper issue. Approaching the counter again, Terrence now held a boxed Bluetooth speaker set. He gently placed it down, a gesture meant to naturally draw attention. The young staffer finally looked up, his face showing no interest or emotion. "Need something?" he asked, his voice flat, with zero eagerness to assist. Terrence offered a polite smile, trying to ease the awkwardness. "Yeah, I was hoping you could tell me more about these. Are they good for outdoor use?" The worker gave the box a quick, disinterested glance and shrugged. "Dunno. Probably," he muttered, already glancing back at his phone. Terrence paused, surprised by the lack of effort. "Could you maybe check? I'd like to be sure before buying." With an exaggerated sigh, as if Terrence had asked for the impossible, the employee snatched the box and turned it over. He scanned the text briefly. "Says here they're weatherproof," he mumbled, handing it back without elaboration. A surge of frustration rose in Terrence, though he kept his tone steady. "Okay. Do you know if they work with most devices?" The employee rolled his eyes. "Look, man," he said, gesturing lazily at the packaging. "Everything's written right here. You can read it yourself or grab something else. Doesn't matter to me." A heavy silence settled between them, broken only by the low buzz of the store in the background. Terrence felt his shoulders tense. This wasn't just inattentiveness. It was outright disrespect. His eyes drifted around the store. Other shoppers were receiving helpful, friendly service. There was warmth. Engagement, but clearly not for him. Near the front of the store, a white couple was receiving personalized help from the same young man who had assisted the older woman earlier. Yet when it came to Terrence, the employee barely acknowledged him. Determined to stay calm, Terrence decided to probe the situation a bit more. "You seem busy," he said, keeping his tone even. "Is there someone else who could assist me?" The employee smirked, a look of disdain creeping across his face. "I don't think anyone's free right now. Just figure it out, all right." The words hit Terrence harder than he expected. He wasn't angry, not yet, but deeply disappointed. This wasn't merely a bad attitude. It was something deeper, something far more troubling. And it wasn't just about him. If this was how the employee treated an ordinary customer, how many others had left the store feeling the same sting of neglect? Before Terrence could respond, the young man turned away, grabbing his phone and heading toward the back of the store. Terrence stood frozen, still clutching the box of speakers. For a moment he considered leaving, but quickly dismissed the idea. He wasn't finished yet. What Terrence didn't realize was that this dismissive moment would soon reveal a far more serious issue within the culture he thought he had nurtured. He carefully placed the speakers back on the shelf, his mind racing. This wasn't just unprofessional behavior, it felt personal. Determined to understand more, he continued exploring the store, watching how other employees interacted with customers. If this encounter was a one-off, he needed to confirm it. If not, he faced a much larger problem. He wandered into the clothing section, where a young Latina employee was folding shirts. She greeted him warmly, her smile sincere. "Let me know if you need help with anything," she said. Her friendliness was a sharp contrast to the cold reception Terence had just experienced. He lingered, pretending to browse, and watched her assist an elderly man nearby. She was patient, attentive, helping him find the right size and even suggesting a matching tie. The man's gratitude was clear, and the interaction gave Terence a small spark of hope. Maybe the store wasn't completely off course after all. As he headed toward the home goods aisle, a conversation abruptly halted his steps. Two young employees, casually leaning against a shelf, were engaged in a quiet but clearly disrespectful discussion. "That guy over there," one whispered, nodding subtly toward Terence, "is probably just browsing. People like him never buy anything big." Terence felt his jaw clench as he pretended to inspect a set of pots and pans. The other employee laughed, saying, "Yeah, he doesn't seem like he has the money for this stuff. Probably just wasting time." The blow hit hard. They had no idea who he really was. To them, he was simply another black man wandering through a store they assumed he couldn't afford. The casualness of their talk and how easily they dismissed him revealed a deeper truth. It wasn't just one bad employee. It was a culture that had allowed such attitudes to thrive. He held his silence, resisting the urge to confront them then and there. Instead, he moved toward the checkout, determined to learn as much as he could before addressing the problem. At the register, a middle-aged black woman named Denise was helping customers with a warm, professional attitude. Terence observed her greeting each person with a friendly smile and steady, kind voice. When it was his turn, she looked up and smiled. "Did you find everything okay?" she asked. "Not exactly." Terence replied carefully. "I think I'll hold off for now." Denise's smile faltered for a moment, but she nodded. "Well, if you need anything, just let us know. We're here to help." Her sincerity briefly lifted the weight pressing on Terence's chest. It was clear not everyone in the store shared the dismissive attitude he had encountered. Yet, this only highlighted the inconsistency. Why were some employees welcoming, while others openly biased? As Terence left the store, he couldn't shake the feeling that something far bigger was at work. He knew it was time to face the truth head-on. Sitting in his car, the afternoon heat pressing against the windows, Terence gripped the steering wheel tightly, staring out at the store proudly displaying his company's logo. It all felt unreal, this business. His pride and joy was meant to embody opportunity, fairness, and respect. Yet the encounters he'd just endured revealed a very different reality, one he hadn't anticipated but couldn't overlook. The dismissive attitude of the electronics employee lingered in his thoughts, but it was the casual remarks overheard in the home goods aisle that struck the deepest. These weren't isolated incidents. They exposed a far bigger problem within the company's culture, a problem left unchecked. Terence reflected on the early days of the business, when he personally trained every manager and hired staff based on shared principles. Back then, he stressed the importance of treating every customer like family, no matter who they were or how much they spent. But as the company expanded, those personal values became harder to maintain. Delegating was necessary, but had it come at the expense of the culture he had fought so hard to build? He wondered if he'd grown too removed from daily operations. While success brought growth, it also created blind spots. Were managers truly encouraging an environment of respect, or turning a blind eye to subtle biases and unprofessional behavior? Had he failed to provide employees with the right tools to combat discrimination and treat everyone fairly? Taking a deep breath, Terence replayed the morning's encounters in his mind. Denise, the warm and attentive cashier, was a reminder of what the business should represent. Yet employees like her were being overshadowed by those who didn't share the same values. This wasn't only about the customer experience, it was about the culture he had allowed to take hold. He reached into the glove compartment for his notebook and began jotting down his thoughts. This wasn't merely about fixing a single store. It was about making sure every employee at every location understood their responsibility in representing the brand. It was about creating accountability from the very top. But before he could begin rebuilding, Terence knew there was one more step that would expose just how deeply the problem ran and confront those at its core. With quiet resolve, Terence stepped back into the store. He wasn't here to cause a scene. He had no intention of embarrassing anyone publicly. This wasn't about ego. His goal was to confront a culture that had strayed from its principles. Walking purposefully, he made his way to the customer service counter and requested to speak with the store manager. After a brief wait, a man in his late 40s approached. His name tag read Brian, and although he appeared professional, there was a hint of caution in his demeanor. "How can I assist you today?" Brian asked. Terence offered his hand. "Terence Hall," he said, watching Brian's eyes widen in recognition. "I'm the owner of this store." Brian's calm cracked for a moment before he quickly regained composure. "Mr. Hall, it's an honor to meet you. Had I known you were coming, I would have prepared." Terence raised a hand to interrupt. "That's exactly why I'm here, Brian. You weren't supposed to know. I came as just another customer to see what's really happening behind the scenes, and what I witnessed today was disappointing." Brian's cheeks flushed slightly. "I'm sorry to hear that. Could you explain what occurred?" Calm but resolute, Terence described the day's events. The coldness of the electronics employee, the overheard remarks, and the glaring disparities in how customers were treated. His voice carried the weight of genuine disappointment. "This isn't about one bad employee," he said firmly. "It's about a culture that tolerates this behavior. I built this company believing every customer deserves respect, no matter who they are. Today, I saw the opposite." Brian shifted uneasily. "I wasn't aware of these problems. I've always tried to ensure our team lives by the company's values." Terence nodded. "I believe you, but clearly something is slipping through the cracks. This isn't just your responsibility, it's mine too. Somewhere along the way, I let the values I founded this company on weaken. That stops now." He asked Brian to call the staff together for an impromptu meeting in the break room. Within minutes, the employees gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Terence stood before them, not just a customer anymore, but the leader they hadn't expected to see. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice steady. "For those who don't know me, my name is Terence Hall. I'm the founder and CEO of this company, and today I came here undercover." Terence wanted to observe firsthand how operations were truly running. The room went quiet, the weight of his statement settling over everyone. He paused, scanning each face before continuing. "What I witnessed today is concerning. Some of you showed the kindness and professionalism this company was founded on, but others failed to meet even the most basic standard of respect. And that failure isn't just yours to bear, it's mine as well, for not ensuring our culture remains strong and consistent." He then looked directly at the young electronics employee, who now appeared pale and uneasy. "You dismissed me, ignored me, and made it clear I wasn't worth your time. That is unacceptable, but worse still, I overheard 2 employees talking about me, making assumptions about who I am and what I can afford based on nothing more than a glance." A heavy tension filled the room, yet Terence kept his voice steady. "I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to fix this, because if we don't treat every customer with respect, we fail. And I will not let this company fail." Watching their faces shift from shock to reflection, Terence knew this was only the first step toward the changes he had to make. He paused again, allowing the silence to sink in. The weight of his words had landed. Now the crucial part, action. He understood that merely pointing out problems wouldn't suffice. He had to guide the way forward. "Here's what will happen," he said, calm but firm. This isn't about punishment or blame, it's about accountability and growth. Every one of us, myself included, must uphold the values this company was built on. Starting today, changes will be made. Turning to Brian, the store manager, he continued, "First, we're implementing mandatory training on bias and customer service, not just here, but in every store. It's not enough to assume people know how to treat others. We need to teach it, reinforce it, and hold people accountable." Brian nodded, a mix of relief and determination in his expression. "Understood, Mr. Hall. I'll make sure it happens." Terrence then addressed the entire group once more, beginning his second point. "I will be visiting more stores in person without prior notice. This isn't about catching anyone off guard. It's about staying connected. I need to witness firsthand what's happening on the ground." The employees exchanged uneasy looks, but there was an air of understanding in the room. Terrence noticed that some of them, especially Denise, subtly nodded in agreement. Finally, Terrence softened his tone. He said, "I want to hear from all of you. What's working, what isn't, and if there are problems with leadership or policies, I need to know. My door is open. But more importantly, I'll make sure there's a way for you to voice concerns anonymously if you don't feel comfortable coming directly to me." The employees seemed to ease up a bit, which Terrence took as a cue to end on a sincere note. "I started this company because I wanted to build something different, something better, a place where everyone, no matter who they are, feels valued. Somewhere along the way, we lost a bit of that, but I'm not giving up. I believe we can do better, and I'm counting on all of you to help make that happen." As the meeting came to a close, Terrence approached Denise, the cashier who had shown professionalism and warmth. "Thank you for being a bright spot today," he said with a genuine smile. "Your attitude reminds me why I began this business." Denise smiled back, her voice steady. "Thank you, Mr. Hall. I just try to treat people the way I'd want to be treated." Leaving the store for the second time that day, Terrence felt a mix of fatigue and hope. The path forward wouldn't be simple, but it was essential. He had been shaken awake, and now it was his responsibility to act. As he drove away, Terrence couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. He understood that sometimes facing difficult truths is the only way to move forward, and that every step toward change starts with someone willing to take the first. If this story struck a chord with you, remember that even the smallest actions can make the biggest difference. Treat others with respect, speak out against injustice, and never stop striving for a fairer, better world. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire change.